The police siren screamed through the quiet neighborhood as 72-year-old Martha Johnson slowly walked down Maple Street with her grocery bag. Officer Dave Richards gripped the leash of his K-9 partner Rex tighter as his radio crackled with urgent commands. Suspect is an elderly African-American woman walking south on Maple Street. She matches the description of the bank robber. Send Rex in for apprehension. Martha had no idea that in the next 30 seconds her life would change forever and that a German Shepherd trained to attack would become the hero of a story that would make grown men cry. Martha Johnson had lived in Willowbrook for 50 years. She raised 4 children as a single mother after her husband died in Vietnam. Every Tuesday, she walked to Miller's grocery store to buy food for the week. Her arthritis made walking painful, but she never complained. The neighbors loved her homemade cookies and the way she always asked about their families. Today felt different, though. Police cars had been circling the neighborhood all morning. Someone had robbed First National Bank, and the thief was described as an elderly African-American woman wearing a blue coat. Martha wore a blue coat that her late daughter had given her before she passed from cancer 2 years ago. Officer Richards had been on the force for 15 years, but today his hands were shaking. His captain had been pressuring all the officers to make arrests after crime rates went up. "Richards, you better not mess this up again," Captain Morrison had yelled that morning. "Your job depends on catching this bank robber." Rex was a 3-year-old German Shepherd trained in suspect apprehension. He had never failed to take down a criminal when given the attack command. The dog's powerful jaws and 90-pound frame could stop any suspect in seconds. But Rex had also never been ordered to attack someone like Martha Johnson. As Martha walked past the old oak tree where she used to push her grandchildren on the tire swing, she heard heavy footsteps behind her. "Ma'am, stop right there and put your hands up," Officer Richards shouted. Martha turned around confused and frightened. Her grocery bag slipped from her hands and apples rolled across the sidewalk. "Officer, what's wrong?" she asked in a trembling voice. "I was just buying food for dinner." Richards looked at the description again. Elderly African-American woman in blue coat. It matched perfectly. His radio crackled again. "Richards, deploy the K-9 now. Do not let the suspect escape." Rex could sense the tension in his handler's voice. The dog had been trained to read body language and vocal stress patterns. But something felt wrong to the intelligent animal. The woman in front of them was not running or fighting or showing any signs of aggression. She smelled like vanilla cookies and lavender soap, not fear and adrenaline like criminals usually did. Rex's training told him to attack on command, but his instincts were screaming something different. Dogs can sense things humans cannot, and Rex sensed that this woman was not a threat to anyone. "Ma'am, you are under arrest for bank robbery," Richards announced as he unclipped Rex's leash. "Rex, attack," he commanded, pointing at Martha. The crowd of neighbors who had gathered gasped in horror. Mrs. Peterson from next door screamed. "That's Martha Johnson, she wouldn't hurt a fly." But the command had been given, and Rex was already moving toward the terrified woman. Martha closed her eyes and whispered a prayer as the massive dog charged toward her with his teeth bared and muscles coiled for impact. But something miraculous happened in that moment. Instead of attacking Martha, Rex stopped just inches from her and began sniffing around her feet. The dog's tail started wagging, and he looked up at her face with gentle brown eyes. Then Rex did something that shocked everyone watching. He sat down in front of Martha and placed his head on her lap like he was asking for permission to be petted. Officer Richards stood frozen in disbelief. In 3 years of service, Rex had never disobeyed a direct command to attack. Martha looked down at the beautiful dog sitting peacefully at her feet. Despite her fear, she reached down and gently scratched behind his ears. "Hello there, sweet boy," she whispered. "You're just doing your job, aren't you?" Rex's tail wagged harder, and he leaned into her touch. The crowd watched in amazement as this woman who was supposed to be a dangerous criminal showed nothing but kindness to the dog that had been sent to attack her. Even Officer Richards felt his heart skip a beat at the tender scene unfolding before him. "Richards, what the hell is going on over there?" Captain Morrison's voice boomed through the radio. "Why haven't you apprehended the suspect, officer?" Richards looked at Martha petting Rex and felt doubt creeping into his mind. This gentle old woman didn't look like any bank robber he had ever seen. Her hands were shaking not from guilt but from fear and age. Her grocery list was still clutched in her free hand with items like milk, bread, and cat food written in careful handwriting. Something was very wrong about this whole situation. Mrs. Peterson ran forward from the crowd shouting, "Officer, that's Martha Johnson. She's lived here for 50 years. She volunteers at the church and takes care of sick neighbors. There's no way she robbed any bank." Other neighbors began speaking up too. "Martha was helping me with my garden this morning," called out Mr. Davis. "She was at the community center reading to children yesterday," added teacher Sarah Williams. The crowd grew larger and more voices joined in defending Martha's character. Officer Richards felt his confidence crumbling. Rex was still sitting calmly with Martha's hand on his head, looking more relaxed than he ever did at the police station. The dog seemed to trust this woman completely. Animals could sense things about people that humans missed, and Rex was clearly telling him that Martha was not a criminal. Richards reached for his radio with a trembling hand. "Captain, I think we might have the wrong person. The dog won't attack and the neighbors are saying she's lived here for decades." "Nonsense, Richards," Captain Morrison barked back. "She matches the description exactly. Stop being soft and do your job. If the dog won't attack, then you arrest her yourself." The pressure was building, and Richards knew his career was on the line. But looking at Martha's kind face and seeing how Rex trusted her made him question everything. How could this sweet old woman who baked cookies for neighbors and read to children be a bank robber? It didn't make any sense at all. Just then, a police car screeched around the corner and Officer Jennifer Walsh jumped out. "Richard, stop everything," she shouted as she ran toward them. "We got the real bank robber downtown." It was a man in disguise wearing a wig and makeup. The bank cameras caught him taking off the costume in the parking lot. "This woman is innocent." The crowd erupted in angry shouts directed at Officer Richards. Martha just stood there still petting Rex, who hadn't moved from her side. Officer Richards felt his legs go weak with relief and shame. He had almost made the biggest mistake of his career and destroyed an innocent woman's life. Rex had known the truth all along and tried to save them both from making a terrible error. "Ma'am, I am so sorry," Richard said as he walked toward Martha with tears in his eyes. "I almost made a horrible mistake, and I don't know how to apologize enough." Martha looked up at him with surprisingly gentle eyes and said, "Son, everyone makes mistakes. What matters is that you listen to your heart and do what's right." The crowd began to disperse, but many neighbors stayed to check on Martha. She was shaken but not angry, which amazed everyone who witnessed what had almost happened. "That beautiful dog knew I wasn't a criminal," she said, while still petting Rex. "Animals can see into our hearts better than people. Sometimes." Officer Richards knelt down next to his partner and said, "Good boy, Rex. You saved us both today." The dog's tail wagged as if he understood every word. Captain Morrison arrived on the scene 15 minutes later, expecting to see an arrest. Instead, he found his officer sitting on the sidewalk next to an elderly woman and his canine dog, who was peacefully enjoying head scratches. "Richards, what is the meaning of this?" he demanded. Officer Walsh explained how they had caught the real bank robber and how Rex had refused to attack an innocent woman. The captain's face turned red with embarrassment as neighbors glared at him with anger and disappointment. Martha slowly stood up with Rex still by her side. "Officers, I don't want anyone to get in trouble over this misunderstanding," she said in a voice full of grace. "We all learned something important today about not judging people by how they look." Her words hit everyone present like a lightning bolt. Here was a woman who had been terrified and humiliated but was showing nothing but forgiveness and wisdom. Even Captain Morrison felt ashamed of his aggressive orders. The story of what happened on Maple Street spread through Willowbrook like wildfire. Local news stations picked it up, and soon the video of Rex refusing to attack Martha went viral across the country. People were amazed by the dog's intuition and Martha's incredible grace under pressure. Thousands of comments poured in praising both the wise German Shepherd and the forgiving grandmother, who taught everyone about real strength and character. Officer Richards requested a meeting with the police chief the next day. He wanted to recommend changes in how they handled suspect identifications and the use of K-9 units. "Rex taught me that sometimes we need to trust our instincts even when orders say otherwise," he explained. The chief was so impressed by Richard's honesty and Martha's reaction that he implemented new training protocols requiring officers to verify suspect identity through multiple sources before deploying attack dogs. 3 months later, Martha received an invitation to speak at the police academy graduation ceremony. She walked slowly to the podium with Rex by her side, as Officer Richards had arranged for the dog to accompany her. "Future officers," she began in her gentle voice, "remember that your job is to protect and serve all people with dignity and respect. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is admit when you might be wrong, but that's what real courage looks like." The graduating class gave her a standing ovation. That lasted 5 minutes. Rex became a celebrity in his own right and was featured in training videos about police dog intuition and proper suspect assessment. Animal behaviorists studied his actions that day and concluded that highly trained dogs can indeed sense human character in ways that science doesn't fully understand yet. The German Shepherd received commendations from multiple law enforcement agencies and even appeared on national television talk shows with Martha and Officer Richards. The friendship between Martha and Officer Richards grew stronger over the following months. He would stop by her house during patrols to check on her, and she would have fresh cookies waiting for him and Rex. The three of them became an unlikely family bonded by that life-changing day on Maple Street. Richards often said that meeting Martha taught him more about being a good police officer than all his years of training combined. 1 year later, the city of Willowbrook unveiled a statue in Memorial Park honoring the power of compassion and understanding. The bronze sculpture showed an elderly woman petting a German Shepherd with a police officer kneeling beside them. The inscription read, "True justice comes not from force, but from wisdom, forgiveness, and the courage to admit our mistakes." Martha, now 73 years old, was present for the dedication ceremony along with Rex, who was officially retiring from active duty. As Martha gave her final speech at the statue dedication, she looked out at the crowd of hundreds who had come to honor her story. "The real hero of this story is not me," she said with tears in her eyes. "It's a beautiful dog named Rex, who knew that love is always stronger than fear, and that the truth will always find a way to shine through darkness. Sometimes angels come in the most unexpected forms, and sometimes the greatest lessons come from our most difficult moments." The crowd wiped away tears as Rex barked once as if he was saying goodbye to his career as a police dog. Today, Martha Johnson continues to live quietly in Willowbrook, surrounded by neighbors who love her and a German Shepherd named Rex who visits her every day. Officer Richards was promoted to sergeant and now trains other officers in community relations and proper K-9 handling procedures. The story of what happened on Maple Street has been told in schools, churches, and police departments across America as an example of how wisdom, compassion, and the courage to do what's right can change the world one heart at a time. But Martha's story didn't end with the statue dedication. 6 months after Rex's retirement, Martha noticed the old German Shepherd moving slower during his daily visits. She called Officer Richards with concern in her voice. "Dave, I think Rex might be getting sick," she said softly. "He's not eating his treats like he used to, and he seems tired all the time." The News hit Richards like a punch to the stomach. Rex had been his partner, his best friend, and the dog who taught him the most important lesson of his career. The veterinarian's diagnosis was heartbreaking. Rex had developed cancer, and the treatment options were limited for a dog his age. Officer Richards sat in the examination room with tears streaming down his face as the doctor explained that Rex had maybe 6 months left to live. "I want him to spend his remaining time with the person who means the most to him," Richards told Martha that evening. "Rex saved your life that day on Maple Street, but you saved his soul by showing him what real love looks like." Martha welcomed Rex into her home as a permanent member of her family. She set up a comfortable bed in her living room where Rex could watch the birds outside the window. Every morning she would make him scrambled eggs and sit beside him while he ate. "Good morning, my sweet angel dog," she would whisper as she gently stroked his graying fur. Rex's tail would wag weakly, but his eyes still sparkled with happiness whenever Martha entered the room. Word spread through Willowbrook about Rex's condition, and the entire community rallied to help. Children from the elementary school made get-well cards with pictures of Rex drawn in colorful crayons. The local pet store donated special food and medicine. Even Captain Morrison, who had once been so harsh and demanding, stopped by Martha's house every week to visit Rex and apologize again for the mistakes that were made that terrible day on Maple Street. As Rex grew weaker, Martha never left his side. She would read him stories from the newspaper and tell him about all the good things happening in the neighborhood. "Remember Mrs. Peterson's granddaughter who was afraid of dogs?" Martha would say while petting Rex's head. "Well, she came by yesterday asking if she could visit you, because she heard you were the bravest dog in the world." Rex's breathing was becoming more labored, but he still managed to lift his head whenever Martha spoke to him. Officer Richards visited every day after his shift ended. He would sit on the floor next to Rex and tell him stories about their adventures together as partners. "Remember that car chase last year when you helped catch those burglars?" Richards would say with a sad smile. "You were so fast and so smart. The whole department was proud of you." Martha would bring them both hot chocolate and watch as man and dog shared their special bond one more time. The local newspaper decided to run a series of articles about Rex's impact on the community. Reporter Susan Martinez interviewed dozens of people whose lives had been touched by the story of the dog who refused to attack an innocent woman. "Rex taught us that sometimes doing the right thing means going against orders," said Police Chief Williams. His actions that day changed how our entire department approaches community policing. Articles brought visitors from neighboring towns who wanted to meet the famous dog and thank Martha for her grace and forgiveness. 3 weeks before Rex passed away, something beautiful happened that nobody expected. A family from across town brought their young daughter Emma to meet Rex. Emma had been born with autism and was terrified of all animals, especially dogs. But when she saw Rex lying peacefully in Martha's living room, something magical occurred. The little girl walked slowly over to the old German shepherd and gently placed her small hand on his back. "Nice doggy," she whispered. It was the first time Emma had ever touched an animal without fear. Emma's parents cried as they watched their daughter finally overcome her fear. Martha invited the family to visit Rex every week, and slowly Emma began to open up more and more. She would bring Rex her favorite stuffed animals and read him simple picture books in her quiet voice. "Rex is helping Emma learn to trust," her mother told Martha with tears of gratitude. "Even while he's sick, he's still helping others just like he helped you that day." Rex seemed to understand his importance to the little girl and would always lift his head when she arrived. The end came on a peaceful Sunday morning in spring. Martha woke up to find Rex breathing very slowly with his head resting on his favorite blanket. She called Officer Richards immediately, and he rushed over with his wife Sarah. Together, the three of them sat with Rex during his final moments. "You're the best dog who ever lived," Richards whispered as he held Rex's paw. "Thank you for teaching me what it means to be truly brave." Martha sang Rex a soft lullaby. that her own mother had sung to her as a child. Rex's tail wagged one last time before he closed his eyes forever. The funeral for Rex drew over 500 people to Willowbrook Community Park. Officers from 12 different police departments came to honor the canine who had changed the way they thought about their jobs. Children released balloons in Rex's favorite colors of blue and gold, while Martha spoke about the lessons he had taught them all. Rex showed us that true strength comes from protecting those who cannot protect themselves, she said through her tears. He also showed us that love is more powerful than any weapon, and that sometimes the most important thing an officer can do is choose mercy over force. Month after Rex's passing, Martha received an unexpected visitor. A young woman named Patricia Williams knocked on her door holding a small German Shepherd puppy. "Mrs. Johnson, my name is Patricia, and I'm a police officer from the next county," she said nervously. "I heard about what Rex did for you, and I wanted to ask if you would consider helping me train my new canine partner. I want him to learn the same wisdom that Rex had." Martha looked down at the adorable puppy, who reminded her so much of Rex when he was young. "What's his name, sweetie?" Martha asked as she knelt down to pet the puppy. "His name is Justice," Patricia replied. "I named him that because of what your story taught me about real justice, being about compassion, not just punishment." Martha smiled as Justice licked her hand with his tiny pink tongue. "Well, Justice, I think Rex would want me to help you become the best police dog you can be. But first you need to learn that your job is to protect all people no matter what they look like or where they come from." The training sessions with Justice became a weekly tradition that brought the whole neighborhood together. Martha would teach the young dog about gentleness and patience, while Officer Patricia learned about community policing from the woman who had lived through its importance firsthand. Children would gather in Martha's backyard to watch Justice practice his commands and learn to differentiate between real threats and innocent people who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. 6 months into Justice's training, Martha received a phone call that would test everything she had learned about forgiveness. The real bank robber, a man named Tommy Chun, had been released from prison after serving his sentence. He had heard about Martha's story and wanted to meet her to apologize for the trouble his crime had caused her. "Mrs. Johnson, I know I have no right to ask this, but I was wondering if you would be willing to meet with me," he said in a shaky voice. "What I did led to you almost being attacked by that police dog, and I can't sleep at night knowing how much pain I caused." Martha surprised everyone by agreeing to meet Tommy at the community center with Officer Richards and Justice present for support. When Tommy walked into the room, he immediately broke down crying. "Ma'am, I am so sorry for what my actions put you through," he sobbed. "I never meant for an innocent person to get hurt because of my crime. I've been clean and sober for 8 months now, and I want to spend the rest of my life making up for the damage I caused." Martha listened quietly as Tommy told his story of addiction, desperation, and the moment he decided to rob the bank that changed so many lives. "Tommy, we all make mistakes when we're hurting and desperate," Martha said gently. "What matters now is what you do with the rest of your life. Rex taught me that everyone deserves a second chance to do better." She offered Tommy a job helping with Justice's training sessions as a way to give back to the community. "You can help teach young people about the real consequences of crime and show them there's always a better path forward." Tommy accepted gratefully and became one of Martha's most dedicated volunteers. The story of Martha's continued compassion toward Tommy Chun made national headlines again. News stations interviewed criminologists and social workers who praised Martha's approach to restorative justice. "This woman understands something that our legal system often misses," said Dr. Angela Foster, a professor of criminal justice. "Healing comes not from punishment alone, but from bringing people together to understand how their actions affect others and giving them chances to make things right." 2 years after Rex's death, Martha received an honor she never expected. The President of the United States invited her to the White House to received the Presidential Medal of Freedom for her contributions to community healing and police reform. At age 75, Martha walked slowly across the stage with Justice by her side, now a fully trained police dog who had never once been ordered to attack an innocent person. Mrs. Martha Johnson represents the very best of American values, the president said during the ceremony. She chose forgiveness over anger, understanding over hatred, and love over fear. In her acceptance speech, Martha looked out at the audience of dignitaries and officials and spoke from her heart. "I want to thank a German shepherd named Rex, who taught me that heroes come in all shapes and sizes, and that sometimes the most important battles are won, not with force, but with kindness. I also want to thank Officer Dave Richards, who had the courage to admit when he was wrong, and Captain Morrison, who learned to lead with wisdom instead of just authority. Most of all, I want to thank my community of Willowbrook, who showed me that when people come together with love in their hearts, they can heal any wound and solve any problem." Today, Martha Johnson is 77 years old and still lives in the same house on Maple Street. Justice visits her every day with his partner officer Patricia Williams, who credits Martha with teaching her how to be the kind of police officer her community truly needs. The statue in Memorial Park has become a pilgrimage site for law enforcement officers from around the world who want to learn about the power of compassion in policing. Emma, the little girl with autism who overcame her fear of dogs through Rex, now volunteers at the animal shelter and plans to become a veterinarian. Officer Richards, now Chief Richards, has implemented Martha's teachings throughout his department's training program. New officers must complete 40 hours of community service and spend time with elderly residents before they're allowed to patrol. "Martha taught us that we're not warriors fighting against our community," Richards explains to each new class of recruits. "We're guardians protecting our neighbors, and sometimes that means protecting them from our own mistakes and prejudices." The legacy of Rex, Martha, and that life-changing day on Maple Street continues to inspire people around the world. Books have been written, movies have been made, and countless lives have been changed by the simple story of a dog who knew that love conquers fear and a woman who chose forgiveness over bitterness. Martha's final words at the White House ceremony have become a motto for police departments everywhere. True justice comes not from the power to hurt others, but from the wisdom to heal them. And sometimes the greatest victories are won by those who choose not to fight at all. Spring came late to Willowbrook the year Martha turned 80. The maple outside her kitchen window budded slowly, as if unwilling to rush a season it had learned to trust. Martha didn't rush either. She woke early, made tea, fed the neighborhood cats who showed up like clockwork, and ran a hand along the bronze statuette of Rex on her windowsill cast from the larger memorial in the park. Justice still visited daily with Officer Patricia, who had married a school counselor and now juggled a life full of forms and feelings and a dog with a badge. Tommy Chun taught 2 nights a week at the community center, a class titled Owning the Aftermath, where he told teenagers the things he wished someone had told him at their age. Emma, taller now, sometimes sat in, asking careful questions and taking notes in a spiral-bound notebook covered with puppy stickers. It was a good life, a soft echo of a louder one, and Martha felt grateful for it. But time has its own steady stride. The neighbors began taking turns walking with her to Miller's grocery on Tuesdays. Chief Richards, he refused to let anyone call him Dave on duty, but everyone did anyway, installed a handrail up her front steps. A department safety collaboration, he joked, paid for by a group of officers who still thought about Maple Street whenever they clipped a leash. The call came on a humid afternoon in June. Patricia's voice was tight. "There's an active call near the riverfront. A store owner says a suspect has a gun. Justice and I are the closest unit. Be careful, baby," Martha said, the old worry threading through her calm. "Listen as hard as you look," Patricia laughed. Not because it was funny, but because that was what you did before heading toward a storm. Always, the riverfront had changed since the days of Rex new cafes. Bike lanes, murals that made the underpass feel like a gallery. Today, it looked tired. A man in his 20s, jacket zipped despite the heat, stood on the curb with his hands half hidden. Bystanders took out their phones. Officers formed a loose arc, calls layered over calls. Drop your hands. We can help you. Don't move. Justice's ears flicked, cataloging tones. Patricia held his lead firm but loose, every muscle taught by months of training in how to breathe before you act. She saw the man's left shoulder tremble and remembered Martha's voice, patient as a metronome. Be curious first. Ask a better question. She softened her tone and did not step closer. What's your name? She called. The man blinked like the sound startled him. Darren, I'm Patricia, and this is Justice. I don't want anyone hurt today, including you. What's in your pocket? Nothing, he said too quickly. I mean my hand. Justice had already decided. His body was forward, but his weight stayed back. Not the tense angle Martha had taught Patricia to notice in videos, the coil before danger, but something else. Fear shading into shame. Can I show you something? Patricia asked. She unhooked Justice's lead, but did not release him. This dog won't move without my say-so, okay? Watch. She touched 2 fingers to her chest, the signal for stay, then took a step, palms open. We can figure this out together, Darren. Somewhere in the crowd, someone muttered about foolishness. Somewhere else, someone started crying. Patricia kept her eyes level. Darren pulled his hand from the pocket. It was empty. He pushed his palms toward the sky, like someone handing back the day. Justice exhaled, a long rib-deep sound, and leaned against Patricia's leg. The officers lowered their voices. It turned out the store owner had pressed the alarm button when Darren fell against a display, dizzy from skipping breakfast. The gun had been a phone clipped to a belt worn under his jacket. A misunderstanding, distilled and then watered down by good luck and good training. That night, Martha wrote 3 thank you notes, one to Patricia, one to Justice, a bowl of chicken counted as a letter in that household, and one to Darren. You did the bravest thing, she penned in neat loops, which is to let yourself be seen. A week later, a package arrived for Martha, a framed photograph taken from someone's crowd video at the riverfront. Patricia stood with her hands open, Justice pressed to her side. The caption underneath, written in gold ink by a teenager who attended Tommy's class, read, "The Rex Standard." The phrase caught on the way the first leaf catches wind. Departments began calling their de-escalation drills Rex Standard scenarios. Grants were written. A nonprofit formed, then 3 more, because paperwork multiplies where good intentions gather. The White House announced a national initiative on restorative policing. Martha received a letter inviting her to consult, not for photo ops but for policies line items and pilot programs and the difficult work of turning sentiment into structure. She sat at her kitchen table in her blue bathrobe and wrote suggestions in the margins, just as she used to mark recipes. Pair every K-9 unit with a community liaison for 6 months before first deployment. Require officers to complete a neighborhood fellowship, deliver meals. Read at schools, ride along with social workers. Publicly report near-miss incidents where restraint prevented harm. Reward those choices as much as arrests. She addressed the envelope, pressed the stamp, and felt like the world was listening, not just to the noise, but to the notes. Summer tilted toward fair season. The statue in Memorial Park wore a wreath of sunflowers. Emma, now in her 2nd year of pre-vet courses at the State College, set up a Meet the Gentle Giants tent, where kids could pet retired K-9 South and learn that a command is a tool, not a purpose. Tommy managed the volunteers and told jokes so corny even Chief Richards groaned. Patricia and Justice demonstrated how a dog could search a backpack without turning a kid into a suspect. Martha sat under a canvas umbrella with lemonade sweating into the table's wood and told any child who asked that yes, heroes can be four-legged and sometimes they drool. That was the day Martha received the first letter from the man who had once been Captain Morrison and was now, in his own words, a student again. He had retired, moved 2 towns over to be near his grandchildren, and taken a job teaching leadership at a small college. "I used to think volume was authority," he wrote. "It turns out authority is a quiet room where someone feels safe enough to tell you the truth. Thank you for building that room on Maple Street." The second letter came from a woman named Claudia in Oregon, who had watched the riverfront video and bought a leash for a dog she'd been visiting at the shelter, but hadn't let herself love yet. The third came from a man in Alabama whose grandfather had worn a blue coat the day a patrol car sped past and changed everything for a family that never forgot. "Your story softened my father," he wrote. "I didn't know that was possible." Martha placed the letters in a shoebox she labeled Rex's Mail. Some nights she read them aloud to the empty living room, which felt less empty when the wind caught the wind chimes and answered. She slept with the window cracked in dreams that walked like old friends. In late September, her doctor told her that her heart was strong, but her lungs were tired. "We'll add a small oxygen tank," he said gently. "Think of it like a walking stick for breathing." Martha named the tank Blue. Blue sat by the door like a polite guest. She threaded its light tubing over her ears and went on being Martha Church on Sunday. Phone calls with her children and grandchildren, cookies cooling on wire racks, advice offered sparingly and then only when asked. The town council voted to fund a time capsule into the statue artifacts of a decade that had reshaped their sense of one another. Everyone brought something: a child's drawing of justice, a flagged policy manual with margins scribbled by cadets, a patch from the K-9 unit, a copy of Emma's first A in animal physiology, Tommy's lesson plan, a photo of the riverfront day. Martha contributed her blue coat. She smoothed the fabric one last time, touched the stitched name of her late daughter, and folded the coat the way her mother had taught her, sleeves hugging the heart. The crowd went quiet as she placed it in the capsule. "For the next person who needs to be seen," she said. The lid settled with a soft thud that felt like a promise. Winter came early, crisp and bright. Justice developed a fondness for Martha's new electric space heater and would inch closer until Patricia dragged him back with a laugh. On New Year's Day, Chief Richards stopped by with his family and a box of black-eyed peas. They played cards, told the old stories, and made new resolutions they planned to keep. 2 weeks later, Martha didn't come to the door when Patricia knocked. The cats traced little circles on the porch. Patricia called Chief Richards, who arrived in minutes, breath frosting in the air. Inside, they found Martha sleeping in her chair, her hand resting on the windowsill where the small bronze Rex stood guard. The television remote sat on the armrest, a book of poems open to a page about gardens in winter. Blue's light blinked steady. Martha's face held the kind of peace that makes the heart reach for words and find, blessedly, that silence is enough. She left detailed instructions, of course no fuss, a service at the community center, gospel songs anybody could sing no matter their voice, cookies afterward. The town brought more than cookies. They brought stories that braided into a rope strong enough to pull memory across the years. Kids who had grown up rewrote their college essays on compassion and duty. Officers removed their hats and cried without hiding it. Tommy stood at the lectern and tapped the microphone once before remembering he didn't need it. "She kept telling me the future had room for me," he said. I believed her, and then I made room for other people, too. Emma spoke about the first time she touched Rex and what it meant to trust her own hand. Patricia told the riverfront story, then added another, smaller one, the day she had almost lost her patience with a driver who rolled through a stop sign, and how Martha's phrasing, "Listen as hard as you look," had landed like a pebble in her pocket, something to reach for when she needed a different weight. Chief Richards read the inscription at the statue and added a line Martha had scribbled on an index card in her tidy script. Justice begins with an introduction. After the service, they walked to Memorial Park. Snow dusted the bronze. Someone had knit a tiny scarf for the dog's neck. The time capsule plaque gleamed. The wind eased. Patricia brought Justice forward. He sat without being asked and rested his chin against the cool metal, as if greeting an old friend. A murmur rose, a human version of a tail wag. No one tried to wrap the day in simple lessons. Grief is not a worksheet. But they carried home something quiet and usable. The awareness that one person's courage can tune an entire town, and that a dog's refusal to obey the wrong command can rewrite a playbook written in ink so old people had forgotten it could smudge. Spring came back, patient as ever. The maple put out new leaves. The academy class recited a pledge that mentioned service, restraint, and the rec standard. Darren finished community college and started at the city water department. He waved to Justice every time the truck rolled past the station. Emma shadowed a vet who specialized in working dogs and learned how to listen to pain most animals hid. Tommy's class filled faster than there were chairs, so he added floor cushions and joked that humility looked good on teenagers. On Tuesdays, somebody still walked to Miller's grocery just to keep the habit alive. They bought milk and bread and always cat food. On the way back, they passed the old oak with the ghost of a tire swing and, if they were lucky, a breeze that sounded like soft paws on pavement. The neighborhood remains quiet most days, quiet, but not asleep. On Maple Street, porch lights linger a little longer. Wind chimes talk to one another. The statue's bronze gathers fingerprints no one bothers to polish away. And every now and then, when a siren wails and the radio crackles with the urgent shorthand of people trying to keep other people whole, someone touches that index card taped above a desk or a patch sewn on a sleeve and remembers what Martha taught them. Listen as hard as you look. Lead with the hand you hope the world will take. And when your choice is between fear and love, choose the one that lets someone else breathe.